Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Today, we have a great honor and pleasure to have Professor Habib Ahmed from Durham University. And he is the winner of 2022 IsDB Prize for Impactful Achievement in Islamic Economics. Professor Habib Ahmed essentially needs no introduction because he doesn't belong to the new kids on the block in the field of Islamic economics and finance. But some would say that he belongs to the second generation of Muslim economists who have been well trained in the area of not only mainstream economics but also in the Islamic economics, as well as a very sound understanding in the area of fiqh mu'amala. Today, we will be asking some of the interesting, I hope, questions, and we are trying to extract insights and wisdom from Professor Habib Ahmed. Professor Ahmed, welcome to Jeddah. Finally, we made it.
Thank you. Thank you very
It's
much.
been somewhat a delay because Alhamdulillah we survived the full of barakah and full of blessing of the rain that took place yesterday in our beloved city Jeddah, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Professor Ahmed, we will not ask you very technical, difficult questions. Why? Because we know when it comes to difficult and technical question, it will be an easy thing for you. So therefore, we try to come out of the box by asking you some of the outside of your comfort zone, if I may say so, right? And first of all, if you please can tell us a brief about yourself in terms of your professional background or even your personal background, and but one of the most important things is what has triggered you to work on Islamic economics and finance.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. Um, in terms of my background, I am originally from Bangladesh, and I have my first degree from Bangladesh in economics. Then I have another postgraduate degree from Oslo, then a PhD from University of Connecticut in USA. After I finished my PhD in economics, I taught at University of Connecticut, University of Singapore, National University of Singapore, and University of Bahrain. Now, when I was a student, actually when I was in Oslo, master students, I had come across some of the writings on Islamic economics and finance, and that interest, actually my interest in Islamic economics and finance started at that stage. But I was in conventional economics. My PhD was in conventional economics, but I was reading things on Islamic economics and finance on my own while I was studying. The breakthrough in terms of Islamic economics and finance research came when I joined IRTI in 1999. Actually, as I always say that IRTI has been my school in terms of teaching me Islamic finance and economics. When I joined IRTI, I was very fortunate to have the first generation economists, the pioneers. A lot of them were here in Jeddah, both at the IRTI and also at King Abdulaziz University. So that's where my journey started in terms of full-time engagement with Islamic economics and finance. I spent some time at a national commercial bank, actually 1 year. So I had some industry experience before I moved to University of Durham in 2008.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And being the second generation of Muslim economists, alhamdulillah, mashallah, you are still young. And but of course, it's not that young. But throughout your professional career in Islamic economics and finance, who has been the source of your inspiration? And there is a follow-up questions to that. What keeps you motivated?
Well, that's not an easy question. Actually, there are a lot of people who I think influences lives of people. For me as a Muslim, of course, the a lot of influence comes from the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then I think as most of us also are influenced by our parents. One of the I think things which I got inspired from my father was that he emphasized learning and education a lot. And then, in terms of academic influence, of course, as I said, they are very different people. And I think when it comes to Islamic economics and finance, I would say that, of course, we have classical scholars who have contributed to Islamic commercial law, fiqh, muamalat, and others. But I think among the contemporary scholars, as I had mentioned, I had an opportunity to interact with some of the pioneers, and they, in some ways, provide a lot of inspiration in terms of creating this new discipline. And I think this is, in some ways, we have to understand that when you talk about Islamic economics finance, we're trying to look at contemporary economic problems from Islamic perspectives, and it is a new endeavor. And I would say I can name a few names, but that would not be complete. I would say starting with Dr. Umar Chapra, with whom I worked here in ISDB, Dr. Nijatullah Siddiqui. I had an opportunity to interact with Dr. Anas Zarqa, Dr. Manzir Kaf, Dr. Mabid Al Jari, and Dr. Fahim Khan. I was working under him. So these are some of the names I can think of on top of my head. And Dr. Munawar Iqbal, of course, is also one of them.
Well, thank you so much. Let's talk about the ISDB prize now. Let's start with a very simple thing. Were you expecting that you would win the first prize of the ISDB prize for the Islamic economics and finance?
To tell you the truth, I was not, because I was not aware how my contributions would be in some ways evaluated. I have worked on various fields of Islamic economics and finance, and this is partly because Islamic economics finance is a new discipline, and there are a lot of areas where research can be undertaken. And I took this opportunity to work on different topics. But I think lately what has happened is I have worked with a lot of international organizations, multilateral organizations, and written some work on policy-related issues. And I feel that I think one of the key things which relates to knowledge is that it has to be useful. And I think the work which I've done are related to policy and hopefully will have some impact. So, but I was not sure how these will be evaluated, so it was definitely a pleasant surprise when I was awarded the first prize.
Well, thank you for sharing your thought, and I would like to make another confession that you are also one of my inspirations, by the way. And still, in relations to the ISDB prize, how has it furthered your success, and how winning an award like this magnitude has changed you in certain ways?
Well, I would say it has humbled me to start with. I really appreciate the fact that I was awarded the thing, and of course, the award gives you more recognition, and I hope I can use this recognition to further advance the discipline itself and move the discipline of Islamic economics and finance to a direction which hopefully will be more beneficial, not only to Muslims but to humanity. So, as I said, the key thing which the prize does is that it gives you recognition and it adds another, in some ways, qualification or a feature which I can probably use to the benefit of enhancing the discipline of Islamic economics and finance.
Right. Let's talk about the discipline of Islamic economics and finance. How do you see the landscape of this domain or the realm of Islamic economics and finance as a knowledge uh, in the past, current, and future projection? How are you seeing those things?
Well, I think that's a very good question and a difficult question. Now, when we talk about Islamic economics and finance, we actually are talking about a discipline which is multidisciplinary. So you have to, for example, know finance, you have to know Sharia, you have to know the legal systems under which the financial system works, you have to understand the political systems under which economies work. So it becomes difficult in that sense that it is multidisciplinary. And sometimes, if you are strong in one and weak in another, it becomes very difficult to actually understand the scope and the depthness of this discipline. As I said, I have my background was in economics. One of the first things which I did when I came to IRTI was actually study a lot of Sharia related issues, and I was fortunate to be at a place where I could discuss things with people who knew Sharia. So I think in terms of the landscape, this is the nature of discipline, which makes it actually a very rich, multidisciplinary discipline. Now, if we look at the literature, I think we can classify them into, I would say, 2 or 3 different parts. One would be the theoretical conceptual literature, which has discussed Islamic economics and finance from a theoretical and conceptual perspective. And I think the pioneers, they actually had contributed to this conceptual development of the discipline. And then the second area would be the empirical literature, which was basically relatively recent development, because to do empirical work you need to have data and information, and since Islamic economics was applied in the financial sector, most of this empirical literature has been on Islamic banking and finance. And the third area, I think, where we can think of the landscape is the applied research. And this is where we look at research which can be where we can use the principles and values of Islamic economics and finance in real applications. So this is the landscape in terms of Islamic economics and finance.
Right. And in that context, how do you see your contribution? How do you think has it so far been shaping it? Whether it is on the theoretical part, the empirical part, or the applied research, as you mentioned just now.
Yes, I think most of my academic research is on conceptual development of the discipline, and I think it is very important to do that because if we are thinking of advancing the discipline forward, we really have to tackle and deal with the conceptual underpinnings of the subject matter. So my academic research definitely, I would say, is conceptual. And I said I do some work for external organizations, international organizations, that is more applied research. I actually used to, in my conventional economics days, I used to do empirical work, partly because it's easier to publish empirical papers than theoretical papers. But I have stopped doing that and focusing more on conceptual research.
Well, again, I cannot stop thanking you for that, because I also have been the beneficiary of your work, and I'm sure my generation, if I can call the third generation of Muslim economists, have been benefiting immensely from your theoretical work as well. And of course, we cannot thank you enough for that. Let's now move to slightly another domain of questions. And if turning back the clock is possible, is there anything at all that you would have done differently, whether it is in your professional life or in your personal life?
Well, I think again, if I stick to the professional life, I would say there are two things. One, at the in the knowledge area or the academic level, I probably, if I had some chance to actually have some formal education in fiqh and Sharia, which I didn't have. I'm self-taught in Sharia and fiqh, but Alhamdulillah, it has worked well. Uh, uh, but if I had some formal education, definitely I would have better foundations.
Right.
The second area is probably related to the professional experience. I have worked mainly in academia, except for the time in IRTI, and even in IRTI, which is IsDB Institute now, my work was research related. I had some experience, 1 year experience in the industry before I moved to Durham University. So if I would have had a chance to actually work more in the industry, to see the real life issues which arise in applying the principles and values of Islamic finance, I think that definitely would be something beneficial.
Right. And you know what? You will be relieved to know that the next question will be the last question.
Okay.
Right? And it is about your advice, if I may say so. If we can pick 3 keywords of advice to the millennial generation, who has the aspirations to be successful in the Islamic economic development or Islamic economics and finance, what will they be?
Again, a difficult question. I would say, of course, for students, the key thing is to keep learning and not learning while you're students. It has to be a lifelong endeavor. I mean, this is become, we live in a world where it's changing all the time, and new types of knowledge will be needed. So that would also apply to Islamic economics and finance. So I think the first keyword would be keep learning, keep reading, not only issues related to Islamic economics, but things which are happening around, for example, the fourth industrial revolution, for example, the issues related to climate crisis, among others. So that would be the first advice. The second advice in some ways relates to the first is to be adaptable. Again, we live in a world which is changing continuously, a lot of uncertainties. And I think to survive in this environment, again, from an academic perspective also, you have to be able to adapt to new situations, and which means that you have to think of changing your research areas depending on what kind of situations arise. And the third advice I think I would say is would relate to actually look for or do what we call useful research. And actually this is from the teachings of Islam, that the knowledge should be useful. Because a lot of work on research which is being done, we really have to ask sometimes what is the usefulness of the research, because we spend a lot of resources, time doing this research and coming up with papers, but ultimately we have to see whether this research is useful or not. So I would say that when it comes to research, try to do what is useful research.
Well, Professor Ahmed, you've been so gracious in giving us your benign presence. We thank you so much. And sister and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, with that we have come to an end of our interview with Professor Habib Ahmed, the winner of IsDB Prize for the impactful achievement in Islamic economic and finance. And again, congratulations, Professor Habib Ahmed. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi